My name is Michelle. I'm 35 years old, and I've always been the reliable one in my family, the one everyone calls when they need something. So when my sister Rachel needed help moving across the country for her dream job, I didn't hesitate to step up. I transferred $9,300 to cover her relocation expenses, her security deposits, moving truck, and first month's essentials. 3 weeks later, I received a text from my father that made my blood run cold. Michelle, we need to talk about Thanksgiving. Given recent tensions, we'd prefer you stay away from here this year. It's what's best for everyone, especially Rachel. I stared at those words, reading them over and over. The family gathering I had attended every year of my life. The tradition I had never missed. I wasn't invited. And the reason? Helping my own sister. Before I tell you what I did next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to hear how I responded when my family betrayed me after taking my money. To understand why this exclusion devastated me, I need to explain my family dynamics. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings. There's me at 35, my sister Rachel, who just turned 30, and my brother Kyle, who's 28. We grew up in what looked like a picture-perfect middle-class family in suburban Ohio. My parents, David and Margaret, both 62 now, raised us with what they called traditional values. But those values seem to apply differently depending on which child we're talking about. From as early as I can remember, I was given responsibilities. At 8 years old, I was expected to watch my younger siblings while our parents went out. At 12, I got my first job babysitting in the neighborhood, and my parents made it clear that if I wanted anything beyond the basics, I needed to earn it myself. New clothes, school trip extras, birthday parties with friends, all came from my own pocket. Meanwhile, Rachel and Kyle received these things as gifts, rewards for simply existing. I remember my 13th birthday. I had saved up money for months to buy myself a new bike I desperately wanted. When the day came, my parents gave me a card with $20 inside. That same year, for Rachel's 8th birthday, just 3 months later, they threw a party at the local recreation center, complete with a DJ, an elaborate cake, and she received the newest gaming console along with a pile of games. When I asked why there was such a difference, my mother said, "You're practically a teenager now, Michelle. You understand that we can't do big celebrations for everyone. Besides, you're so independent, you don't need all that fuss." That became the pattern. My independence, which was really just me learning to cope with being given less, was used as justification for continuing to give me less. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy. I learned not to ask for things because asking led to disappointment and lectures about being grateful for what I had. School achievements were another area where the disparity was glaring. When I made honor roll in high school, my parents would nod approvingly and maybe take the family out for a casual dinner. When Rachel made honor roll, which happened less frequently, there were celebrations, posts on social media, calls to relatives to spread the good news. My father once explained this by saying, "Well, we expect you to do well, Michelle. You're naturally smart, but Rachel has to work harder for her grades, so we like to celebrate her effort." The message was clear. My successes were expected, and therefore unremarkable. Everyone else's successes were exceptional and worthy of celebration. This carried through to everything. My athletic achievements, my part-time jobs, my acceptance to college, all were met with muted responses. Meanwhile, Kyle's mediocre performance in community college theater productions were treated like Broadway debuts, with my parents attending every show and bringing flowers. By the time I graduated high school, I had already learned the role I was meant to play in this family. The responsible one. The one who had it together. The one who didn't need support because I would figure it out on my own. And I did figure it out. I worked 2 jobs while attending State University, graduated with a degree in computer science, and landed a solid position at a tech company in Columbus. I was proud of what I had accomplished, even if my family's response was a simple, "That's great, Michelle. We knew you'd do well." My relationship with my siblings has always been complicated by these family dynamics. Rachel, being the middle child and my younger sister, occupied a special place in my parents' hearts. She was their princess, could do no wrong, and even when she did, the consequences were minimal. Growing up, I watched her manipulate situations to her advantage, knowing our parents would always take her side. There was an incident when I was 16 and Rachel was 11. She had gone into my room without permission and broken my laptop, which I had saved for months to buy, while playing games she wasn't supposed to be playing. When I discovered it and confronted her, she burst into tears and ran to our parents, claiming I had yelled at her for no reason and scared her. Despite my laptop being clearly broken and in her hands when I found it, my parents grounded me for 2 weeks for being aggressive with your little sister. Rachel never faced any consequences, and I was the one who had to pay to repair my own laptop. As adults, Rachel learned she could leverage her position as the favored daughter. She would call me when she needed things, money for rent, when she overspent on clothes, help moving furniture, someone to complain to about her boyfriend problems or career advice. I always helped, hoping that maybe this time she would see me as more than just a resource. That maybe she would actually appreciate what I did for her, and we could develop a genuine sibling bond. Kyle, my younger brother, was different. He was the baby of the family, and that came with its own set of privileges. He could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, not because he was malicious like Rachel sometimes could be, but because he was simply coddled and protected from real-world consequences. At 28, he still lived at home, worked part-time at a coffee shop despite having a college degree, and spent most of his time playing video games or hanging out with friends. My parents enabled this completely, never pushing him to be independent or self-sufficient. When I suggested to my parents that maybe Kyle needed some encouragement to move out and build his own life, my mother actually got angry with me. "Not everyone is like you, Michelle," she snapped. "Kyle is sensitive. He needs support, not pressure. You were always so driven and independent, but Kyle needs us." The implication was clear. My independence meant I didn't deserve support. Kyle's lack of independence meant he deserved all of it. Despite these dynamics, I maintained my relationships with my family. I showed up for every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering. I bit my tongue when I was overlooked, or when the favoritism was blatant. I told myself that family was important, that these were the people I was stuck with for life, and that maintaining the peace was worth the occasional sting of being treated as less than. I also continued to help financially when asked. Over the years, I had lent my parents money for home repairs, helped Kyle with his car payments more than once, and regularly treated everyone to dinners or gifts. I kept a mental tally not because I expected repayment, but because I wanted to feel like I mattered to them, like my contributions were seen and valued. Looking back now, I can see how unhealthy that pattern was. I was trying to buy love and acknowledgement from people who had already decided my role in the family, but at the time, I couldn't see it. I just kept giving, kept showing up, kept hoping that eventually they would see me as more than just the dependable older sister who had her life together. The situation that led to my father's devastating text began 4 months ago at a family dinner. It was a Sunday evening in July, and we had gathered at my parents' house for what had become a monthly tradition. My mother had made pot roast, my father had grilled corn, and we were all sitting around the dining table in the backyard, enjoying the summer weather. Rachel had been quieter than usual during dinner, picking at her food and checking her phone repeatedly. Finally, my father set down his fork and said, "Rachel, you've been distracted all evening. What's going on?" She looked up, and I could see excitement dancing in her eyes despite her attempt to appear nonchalant. "I got a job offer," she announced. "A really good one." The table erupted with questions. Where? Doing what? How much does it pay? Rachel basked in the attention, drawing out the suspense before finally revealing, "It's a senior marketing position with a tech startup in Seattle. The salary is almost double what I'm making now, and there's equity options and everything." My parents were thrilled. My mother actually teared up, talking about how proud she was of Rachel for landing such an impressive position. Kyle raised his beer in a toast. I was genuinely happy for her, too. Rachel had been struggling in her current marketing job, frequently complaining about her boss and feeling undervalued. This seemed like a great opportunity. "When do you start?" I asked. "That's the thing," Rachel said, her expression shifting to concern. "They want me there in 6 weeks, which means I need to find an apartment, pack up my entire life here, and move across the country in less than 2 months. My parents exchanged worried glances. That's quite a tight timeline, my father said. Have you started looking at apartments in Seattle? Rachel nodded. I've been looking online, but Seattle is expensive, really expensive. The security deposits alone are insane, and most places want first month, last month, and a deposit up front. Plus, I'll need to hire movers, ship my car, and I'll need money to live on until I get my first paycheck. How much are we talking about? My mother asked, and I could hear the concern in her voice. My parents were comfortable, but they weren't wealthy. Dad had recently retired from his job as an accountant, and they were living on his pension and Mom's part-time income as a school administrator. Rachel bit her lip. I've been doing some calculations. Between the apartment deposits, moving costs, shipping my car, and having enough cushion to get settled, I'm looking at needing around $12,000. Maybe a bit more. The silence that fell over the table was heavy. I could see my parents mentally going through their finances, trying to figure out if they could help. Kyle looked uncomfortable, knowing he certainly couldn't contribute anything. And then I did what I always did. I jumped in to solve the problem. I can help, I heard myself saying. I've been saving for a new car, but that can wait. This is more important. Rachel's head snapped toward me, her eyes wide. Michelle, are you serious? That's a lot of money. I'm serious, I confirmed. You're my sister. This is an amazing opportunity for you, and I don't want money to be the thing that stops you from taking it. My mother actually got up from her chair and came around the table to hug me. Michelle, that's so generous of you. Are you sure you can afford it? I assured her I could, though it would significantly deplete my savings. I had been putting away money for years, living frugally and investing wisely. I had enough to help Rachel without going into debt myself, even if it meant my own plans would be delayed. Over the next few weeks, I became deeply involved in Rachel's move. She would call me almost daily with questions or requests. Could I research moving companies and get quotes? Could I help her figure out the best way to ship her car? Could I look at apartment listings and give her my opinion? I did all of it, happy to help, happy to feel needed and valued. The apartment search was particularly intensive. Seattle's rental market was competitive and expensive. After looking at dozens of listings, Rachel found a 1-bedroom apartment in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. It was small but nice, in a good location near her new office, and the building had good reviews. The rent was $2,400 per month, which made my eyes water, but it seemed to be the going rate for that area. The landlord required first month's rent, last month's rent, and a security deposit equal to 1 month's rent up front. That was $7,200 right there. Rachel also needed to pay application fees, renter's insurance, and utility deposits. By the time all the housing costs were calculated, we were looking at about $8,000 just for the apartment. Then, there were the moving costs. Rachel decided to hire professional movers rather than rent a truck and drive across the country herself. That made sense given the distance and the fact that she'd need her car in Seattle anyway, so she'd have to ship it separately. The moving company quoted $2,800 for a cross-country move of her 1-bedroom apartment worth of stuff. Shipping her car added another $1,200. Rachel also wanted to fly out to Seattle a week before her start date to get settled, which meant a last-minute plane ticket at $650. And she asked if I could give her some extra cash to cover immediate expenses like groceries, basic household items, and having a financial cushion while she waited for her first paycheck. I just don't want to arrive in a new city and be completely broke, she explained over the phone. What if something unexpected comes up? I'll pay you back as soon as I'm established, I promise. It was a promise I had heard before from Rachel. She owed me about $3,000 from various loans over the past few years that had never been repaid. But I pushed that thought aside. This was different, I told myself. This was a major life move, a career advancement. Of course she would pay me back this time. I did the math. $8,000 for housing costs, $2,800 for movers, $1,200 for car shipping, $650 for her flight, and I decided to give her an additional $650 for immediate expenses and cushion. That brought the total to $13,300. It was more than I had initially planned, but I had the money in my savings, and I wanted to make sure Rachel had everything she needed. However, when I told her the full amount I was willing to provide, she seemed surprised. "Wait, you're giving me over $13,000? Michelle, that's too much. I can't accept that." I appreciated her hesitation, even if I suspected it was more performative than genuine. "Rachel, I've already committed to helping you. I want you to start this new chapter without financial stress. Consider it an investment in your future." She protested a bit more, but ultimately accepted. We agreed that I would transfer the money in installments as different expenses came due. First, I sent $8,000 for her to secure the apartment, then $4,000 for the moving company and car shipping. Finally, $300 for her flight and immediate expenses. Each time I sent money, Rachel was effusive in her thanks. She sent me photos of the apartment once she signed the lease, gushing about how perfect it was and how grateful she was that I made it possible. She called me from the road when the movers were en route, excitedly talking about her new adventure. When she landed in Seattle, she sent me a selfie with the Space Needle in the background and a caption that read, "Made it. Thanks to the best sister ever." I felt good about helping her. For once, I felt like I had done something that truly mattered to my family. My parents called to thank me again, telling me how proud they were of how generous I had been. Kyle even sent me a text saying, "You're amazing, sis. Rachel's lucky to have you." What I didn't know was that my generosity was about to become the weapon my family used to exclude me. The first sign that something was wrong came about 2 weeks after Rachel had settled in Seattle. I called to check on how she was adjusting, and she seemed distant, distracted. She cut the conversation short, saying she had to go meet some new coworkers for drinks. I brushed it off, figuring she was just busy getting acclimated to her new life. Then I noticed that the family group chat, which was usually pretty active, had gone quiet. My mother, who typically sent daily updates about random things happening in her life, hadn't posted anything in days. When I sent a message asking how everyone was doing, I got brief, one-word responses. "Good. Fine. Busy." I mentioned this to my friend Sarah during our weekly yoga class. "They're probably just adjusting to Rachel being gone," she suggested. "Empty nest syndrome or whatever, even though Kyle still lives there." That made sense, so I didn't push it. But the distance continued. Phone calls with my parents became shorter and more awkward. My mother, who used to chat with me for 30 or 40 minutes about nothing in particular, now seemed eager to get off the phone after just a few minutes. My father, never a big talker, became even more terse. The real shock came in early November, just as I was starting to think about Thanksgiving plans. Every year, my family gathered at my parents' house for Thanksgiving. It was our biggest family tradition. My mother would spend days preparing her famous turkey and all the sides. We'd eat too much, watch football, play board games, and generally enjoy being together. I had assumed this year would be no different, except that Rachel would be missing since she'd only been in Seattle for a couple of months and probably couldn't afford to fly back so soon. I was actually looking forward to it, thinking maybe without Rachel there, I might get a bit more attention from my parents for once. On a Tuesday evening in early November, I was at my apartment after work, scrolling through my phone, when a text from my father came through. My heart sank as I read it. "Michelle, we need to talk about Thanksgiving. Given recent tensions, we'd prefer you stay away from here this year. It's what's best for everyone, especially Rachel. We hope you understand." I read it 3 times, certain I must be misunderstanding something. Recent tensions? What tensions? Rachel wasn't even going to be at Thanksgiving. How could my not attending be what's best for her? My hands were shaking as I called my father. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice guarded. "Hello, Michelle. Dad, I just got your text. I don't understand. What tensions are you talking about?" There was a long pause. "You know what tensions, Michelle. What you said to Rachel." What I said to Rachel. I was completely baffled. "Dad, I haven't said anything to Rachel except to ask how she's settling in." "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb," my father said, his voice taking on an edge I rarely heard. Rachel told us what you said about her taking advantage of us, about her always being the favorite, about how you only helped her move so she'd owe you. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Dad, I never said any of those things. I haven't had any conversation like that with Rachel. She has screenshots, Michelle, he said flatly. Text messages where you went on a rant about how she's always been spoiled and how our family plays favorites. She was devastated. She's been crying for days. Screenshots? My mind was reeling. That's impossible. I never sent messages like that. Can you send them to me? I want to see what she's claiming, I said. I'm not getting in the middle of you and your sister, my father replied. The point is, you've upset her during a time when she's vulnerable and adjusting to a new city. She's asked us not to have you at Thanksgiving because she wants to video call during dinner, and she doesn't feel comfortable doing that if you're there. So Rachel, who isn't even going to be physically present, gets to decide whether I can attend a family gathering? I could hear my voice rising, anger mixing with hurt and confusion. We've decided, Michelle, my father said firmly. Your mother and I think it's best if you take some time to reflect on your behavior. Rachel is going through a big transition, and she needs our support, not conflict. I helped her move, Dad. I gave her over $9,000 of my own money, and now I'm being excluded from Thanksgiving because of lies. It was $9,300, my father corrected, and something in his tone made my blood run cold. And that's part of the problem, isn't it? You keep throwing that in everyone's face. I've never thrown it in anyone's face, I said, my voice breaking now. I've literally never mentioned the amount to anyone except when we were initially planning. That's not what Rachel says. Look, Michelle, I'm not going to argue about this. The decision is made. We'll see you at Christmas, hopefully after you've had time to work through whatever issues you're having. Before I could respond, he hung up. I sat there in my apartment, phone still pressed to my ear, trying to process what had just happened. I had been uninvited from Thanksgiving based on accusations I didn't understand, involving messages I had never sent. I immediately opened my text conversation with Rachel and scrolled through every message we'd exchanged since she'd moved to Seattle. There was nothing even remotely confrontational. I had asked how she was settling in, if she liked her new job, if she needed anything else. Her responses had been brief but friendly. There was absolutely nothing that could be construed as me going on a rant about family favoritism or her owing me. So where had these screenshots come from? I tried calling Rachel directly. It went straight to voicemail. I sent her a text. Rachel, Dad just told me I'm uninvited from Thanksgiving because of things I supposedly said to you. I have no idea what he's talking about. Can we please talk about this? No response. I waited an hour and sent another message. I have our entire text history right here. I never said any of the things you're claiming. Please call me so we can clear this up. Still nothing. I tried calling my mother. She answered but sounded cold. Michelle, your father told me he talked to you. There's nothing more to discuss. Mom, please. I didn't say whatever Rachel is claiming I said. Can't you at least tell me what the screenshots supposedly show? I don't want to get involved, she said, echoing my father's words. This is between you and Rachel. But I will say, I'm disappointed in you, Michelle. After we praised you for being so generous, to find out you've been harboring all this resentment. It's hurtful. I don't have resentment. I was happy to help Rachel. Mom, please, you have to believe me. I think you need to do some soul-searching, Michelle. We'll talk later. She hung up. I tried Kyle next, hoping my brother might be more reasonable. He answered with a heavy sigh. Dude, what did you do? I didn't do anything. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Kyle, have you seen these screenshots Rachel supposedly has? No, but Mom and Dad have. They showed them to me. And what do they say? I don't know, I just glanced at them. Something about Rachel being spoiled and you only helping her so she'd be in your debt. Pretty harsh stuff. Kyle, I never wrote anything like that. Something is really wrong here. Look, I don't want to get in the middle of this, Kyle said. But maybe you did write them and you're forgetting. Like, were you drinking when you texted her? The suggestion that I might have drunkenly sent hateful messages to my sister and then forgotten about it was almost laughable if it weren't so insulting. No, Kyle. I don't send drunk texts, and I definitely didn't send anything like what's being described. Someone is lying, and I need to figure out who and why. I don't know what to tell you. Mom and Dad believe Rachel. And honestly, she was really upset when she called them. Like, crying and everything. After that conversation went nowhere, I sat in my apartment feeling completely helpless. I was being accused of something I didn't do, excluded from a family tradition, and none of them would even show me the alleged evidence or give me a chance to defend myself. That's when I decided to document everything. I took screenshots of my entire text conversation with Rachel, showing there was nothing inflammatory. I checked my email, my Facebook messages, every possible communication channel. Nothing. I even checked my phone's deleted messages folder. Still nothing. Then I did something I probably shouldn't have. I logged into the family cell phone account that I was still listed on as an authorized user. My father had added me years ago so I could help troubleshoot their phones when they had issues, and he'd never removed me. I pulled up the detailed messaging logs. What I found made my stomach turn. According to the logs, Rachel's phone had been exchanging messages with a number I didn't recognize on the same dates she supposedly received my rant. But there were no messages between her phone and my phone during those times. The messages she was claiming came from me literally did not exist in our service provider's records. That's when it hit me. Rachel had fabricated the screenshots. She had either used a fake text generator app or had someone else send her messages that she claimed were from me. But why would she do that? I needed proof that I could show my parents. I called my service provider and explained that I needed detailed records of text message metadata for my account. They were initially resistant, but when I explained it was for a legal matter, potentially involving fraud, they agreed to send me a complete log. While I waited for that documentation, I tried to think through what might have motivated Rachel to create fake messages. What did she gain from getting me excluded from Thanksgiving? Then I remembered something. About a week ago, I had seen a charge on my credit card that I didn't recognize. It was from a Seattle furniture store for $2,100. At the time, I had called my credit card company to report it as fraud. They had reversed the charge and issued me a new card. But what if it wasn't random fraud? What if Rachel had somehow gotten my credit card information? She would have had access to it when I was helping her set up her Seattle accounts. I had read her my card number over the phone for one of the deposits. If Rachel had tried to use my card and I reported it as fraud, she would have known I'd figure out it was her eventually. So she needed to create distance between us, to make sure I couldn't confront her, or that if I did, the family would already be on her side. The documentation from my cell provider arrived 2 days later, and it confirmed what I suspected. There were 0 messages between my phone and Rachel's phone during the time period when she claimed I sent the rant. It was impossible for me to have sent what she was describing. I also received a call from my credit card's fraud department. They had investigated the reverse charge and traced it to a furniture purchase in Seattle that was delivered to Rachel's address. They asked if I wanted to press charges. Everything was falling into place, but it painted an ugly picture. My sister had not only tried to steal from me, but had fabricated evidence to turn my family against me when she got caught. I called my father again. Dad, I need you to listen to me. I have proof that I never sent those messages to Rachel. Michelle, we're not going to... I have documentation from our cell phone provider showing there were no messages between my phone and Rachel's phone on the dates in question. 0. The messages she claims I sent don't exist. There was silence on the other end. Furthermore, I continued, my voice shaking with anger now, I have documentation from my credit card company showing that Rachel tried to make a $2,100 unauthorized purchase using my card information. When I reported it as fraud, she created fake screenshots to preemptively turn you against me so I couldn't confront her about it. That's a serious accusation, Michelle, my father said slowly. I have proof, Dad. I'm emailing it to you right now. Phone records, credit card fraud investigation reports, everything. I sent the documents while still on the phone with him. I heard his computer chime as the email arrived. Look at them, I said. Actually look at the evidence before you decide I'm lying. I waited in silence while he opened the attachments. I could hear him clicking through the documents, his breathing getting heavier. Finally, he spoke. "I need to call you back." The line went dead. For the next 3 hours, I didn't hear anything. I paced my apartment, alternating between anger and anxiety. Had I just blown up my family? Was my father even looking at the evidence objectively? Or would he find a way to rationalize Rachel's behavior? When my phone finally rang, it was my mother. Her voice was tight, strained. "We need to talk. Can you come over tomorrow?" "Will Rachel be there?" I asked. "On video call or otherwise?" "No. This conversation is going to be just the four of us. Me, your father, Kyle, and you." I agreed to come over the next evening. I barely slept that night, running through scenarios in my head. Would they apologize? Would they try to defend Rachel? Would they find some way to blame me for all of this? When I arrived at my parents' house the next evening, the atmosphere was tense. Kyle was already there, sitting on the couch looking uncomfortable. My parents sat in their usual chairs, and there was an empty seat clearly meant for me. My father started. "We called Rachel last night. We confronted her about your accusations." "They're not accusations, Dad. They're documented facts." He held up a hand. "Let me finish. Rachel initially denied everything, but when we told her we had seen the phone records and the credit card fraud report, she broke down." My mother's eyes were red, like she had been crying. "She admitted to everything, Michelle. The fake screenshots, trying to use your credit card, all of it. I should have felt vindicated, but instead, I just felt hollow." "Why?" I asked. "Why would she do this?" Kyle spoke up. "She's in trouble financially. The Seattle job fell through." "What?" I turned to him. "What do you mean it fell through?" My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "The startup ran out of funding. They laid off half their staff, including Rachel. It happened 3 weeks after she started." 3 weeks? I did the math. That meant Rachel had been unemployed for almost 2 months. "Why didn't she tell anyone?" "She was embarrassed," my father said. "She didn't want to admit the move had been a disaster. She's been burning through money trying to maintain her lifestyle while she looks for a new job. When she ran out, she used your credit card to buy furniture she planned to flip for cash." "That's insane," I said. "She could have just asked for help, or she could have moved back home." "She didn't want to look like a failure," my mother said quietly. "And when you reported the charge as fraud, she panicked. She knew eventually you'd figure out it was her, so she created those fake messages to make you look like the bad guy first. She thought if we were already upset with you, we wouldn't believe you when you accused her." The room fell silent. I looked at each of them, seeing the shame and guilt on their faces. "So what happens now?" I asked. My father cleared his throat. "We told Rachel she needs to come home. We're going to help her break her lease and move back, and we expect her to pay you back every penny she owes you, both from the move and from the attempted fraud." "And what about Thanksgiving?" I couldn't help but ask. My mother looked down at her hands. "Michelle, we owe you an enormous apology. We should have given you the benefit of the doubt. We should have asked to see your side of things before just believing Rachel's story. We were so quick to exclude you, and that was wrong. You're invited to Thanksgiving," my father added. "Obviously. And we understand if you need time before you're ready to forgive us for how we handled this." I sat with that for a moment. The apology felt genuine, but it didn't erase the hurt of being so readily excluded, of having my own parents believe I would say such hurtful things to my sister. "I need you to understand something," I said slowly. "This isn't the first time I've felt like an outsider in this family. This isn't the first time I've felt like I matter less than Rachel or Kyle. This situation just made it impossible to ignore anymore." My mother started to protest, but I held up my hand. "Please, let me finish. I've spent my whole life trying to earn my place in this family, working harder, being more responsible, helping whenever asked, giving money I couldn't always afford to give. And the moment there was a conflict, you immediately took Rachel's side without even asking for my perspective." "You're right," my father said quietly. "You're absolutely right." Kyle spoke up, surprising me. "Michelle, I've watched this my whole life. The way they treat you differently. I've never said anything because it benefited me. but it's messed up. You've always been there for all of us, and we've taken you for granted." The acknowledgement from my brother nearly broke me. I had thought, maybe I was imagining the disparity, that I was being oversensitive. Hearing Kyle confirm it was both validating and heartbreaking. "I appreciate you saying that, Kyle," I managed. My mother was crying openly now. I didn't realize we were doing it. Or maybe I did realize, and I justified it by telling myself you were so capable, so independent. You didn't need us the way the others did. But that's not an excuse. You deserved parents who celebrated you just as much, who were there for you just as much. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," my father said, and his voice cracked. "I'm sorry for all of it. For not seeing how we were treating you, for believing Rachel without question, for excluding you from Thanksgiving. You deserved so much better." We talked for over 3 hours that night. They asked me about specific instances where I had felt overlooked or treated differently. I shared memories I had been holding on to for years. My parents listened, really listened, and acknowledged each one. They didn't try to justify or explain away my experiences. They just accepted them and apologized. It was the most honest conversation we had ever had as a family. Before I left, my mother asked, "Will you come to Thanksgiving?" I thought about it. "Yes," I finally said. "But things need to change. I can't keep being the one who gives everything and gets the least in return. I need to feel like an equal member of this family, not just the reliable older sister who solves everyone's problems." "Understood," my father said. "And that starts now." In the weeks that followed, there were significant changes in my family dynamic. Rachel moved back home, and my parents made it clear she needed to get a job and start paying me back. They didn't coddle her or make excuses for her behavior. She was required to contribute to household expenses and actively job search. My parents also started making more of an effort with me. My mother called just to chat, not because she needed something. My father invited me to coffee regularly, father-daughter time that we had never had before. They started acknowledging my achievements and including me in family decisions. Kyle actually moved out and got his own apartment. When I asked him what prompted the change, he said, "Seeing what happened with you made me realize I was becoming like Rachel, taking advantage of mom and dad, not pulling my own weight. I didn't want to be that person." As for Rachel, our relationship was virtually non-existent. She sent me one text apologizing, but it felt hollow and performative. She's been back home for 2 months now and has paid back exactly $200 of the thousands she owes me. My parents are pushing her to do more, but I've told them I'm not holding my breath. The interesting thing is, I've realized I don't actually need the money back. What I needed was for someone in my family to acknowledge that what happened was wrong, that I had been mistreated, and to show through actions that things would change. And surprisingly, my parents have done that. Thanksgiving did happen, and it was different than years past. Rachel was there, awkward and quiet. Kyle was there with his new girlfriend. And for the first time, my mother made a toast specifically about me, thanking me for my patience, my generosity, and my willingness to give our family another chance even after how they had treated me. I'm not naive enough to think everything is perfect now. Families don't change overnight, and there are still moments where I see the old patterns starting to emerge. But the difference is that now when I point them out, my parents actually listen and course correct. I've also learned to set better boundaries. I've told my family that I'm no longer going to be the emergency bank. If Rachel or Kyle need financial help, they can earn it or work it out themselves. My parents didn't argue. They actually agreed it was healthier for everyone. Looking back on that text from my father telling me to stay away from Thanksgiving, I can see now that it was a painful but necessary turning point. It forced our family to confront dynamics that had been toxic for years. It made my parents see how they had been treating me, and it gave me the courage to demand better. I spent $9,300 to help my sister move, and in return, I got fraud, lies, and exclusion. But I also got something unexpected. A family that finally sees me, values me, and treats me like I matter. Not because of what I can provide, but because I'm their daughter and sister. Was it worth $9,300 to get to this point? I honestly don't know. What I do know is that I'm no longer willing to settle for being treated as less than. I know my worth, and I won't accept anything less than respect from the people who claim to love me. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who took you for granted? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about family, boundaries, and finding your worth. Remember, being generous doesn't mean letting people take advantage of you. Real family doesn't keep score, but they also don't keep taking. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in dynamics that diminish you. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it encourages you to stand up for yourself, even when it's family on the other side.